Hi there, welcome to the Noah Presgrove case. Today I'm sharing with you supposed rumours which have come about over time within the community, some of which will absolutely shock you. Today it's about going back over them, putting into perspective the themes of where did they come from, and more so the reason, the motive behind it. Was it done through terrible communication? Was it done in manipulative ways, done unnaturally? And how would people benefit or gain from that? And how do other people end up being on the receiving end and suffering? Join me today in this live premiere, and welcome to those who will be watching on catch up as we go through each supposed point which has been noted down. Credit to the individual Mike for doing so on Facebook. I'll read them out briefly, and then I'll go over them myself and analyse on with my thoughts, what I can remember about them. Have things drastically changed since? Has there been counter evidence too? Because it's okay having bullet points of rumours and what's claimed as BS and incorrect statements and so on, but is there hard evidence to back it up as to why it's BS? Or could it be open for debate, as in maybe it did happen or maybe it didn't? Just like the Kenny Veach case, where people like to jump in on there and say, well, there's proof that Kenny Veach is out there in the desert, and there is proof that he went the wrong way. There is proof that he passed away through certain environments and factors and so on. If that's so true, why is he still missing? How come no bones have been found, no gun being found, no bullet casings being found, no blood, etc.? People don't know, but it is possible, just like how it is possible that what they say is wrong and something else is correct. So it's about putting it into perspective and also understanding the mentality of humans for why we are in this mess and why it's been created, tracing back to the origins to some extent. As well, later I will look at the comment section, which adds on and provides perspective from other people and their reactions, but I want to split it up today so there's a better flow to it. I know things are getting a bit quiet, but these points speak volume. So welcome if you are currently here, I appreciate it. Share your thoughts in the live chat box on the right hand side of the screen. If you want to catch up on recent coverage by me for the full playlist of the Noah Presgrove case, top right corner where the I symbol is, if you click on that, you get the drop down menu with the playlist and some loose videos as well to catch up on in recent time. If you want to support my channel, down below in the comments section, there is a pinned message PayPal link alongside with channel membership. So it's just an alternative way if you want to support the channel. And be sure to share your thoughts, reactions and comments below under the video. If you've got questions, answers, theories, counterpoints, feel free to do so. It helps with that engagement and spreading awareness of the case in total. With that being said, let's begin. So this post was on the Noah Presgrove case discussion group 18 hours ago, Mike Johnson, and it reads, let's make a list of all of the rumours. Number 1, fingers shredded in terms of Noah Presgrove. That's false. 2, Noah Presgrove walked in on Caleb Newton and a minor at the party. False. Number 3, Caleb had a tooth to do with Noah's in his pocket. False. 4, there was a party the next weekend at the same location. False. 5, the fishing trip was BS and they still went fishing. False. Let's get like a double-ended one there. 6, Noah was asking everyone for a ride home. False. 7, Noah was begged to return. False. 8, shorts were neatly folded at the scene. Yes, by law enforcement only. 9, people from the party didn't cooperate. False. 10, Caden's account has been verified or given to police and family. False. 11, there were physical altercations in general. False. And that's Sam. 12, there wasn't blood at the scene. Blood was said to be seeping through the covering and pooling by Noah's head. The rest was internal bleeding documented in amount and locations in the autopsy. 13. White shorts were pristine by Jodie Barth, parts in True Crime Interview where it was said, no unobservable damage is not pristine. I don't say my shorts are damaged, I need to wash them. No unobservable damage means just that they doesn't mean clean. 14. Noah's friends should have told the truth from the start. There's no reason to say they haven't already. 15. If it were an accident, why not call 911? Well, because they weren't on the road to call 911 doesn't mean they were involved in the accident. Big one. Anyone who doesn't think Noah's friends are guilty don't want justice for Noah. Absolutely not true. Someone is still responsible, needs to be held accountable. I believe from the evidence it happened on the road and whoever is involved needs to be held accountable. If it was an accident at this point, they left the scene and Noah alone. Right? Nothing suggests it was his friends. I keep hearing not a hit and run. Well, police have stated a vehicle being involved at least. Doesn't mean it's a hit and run. Police have stated not investigating a murder, and OHP has the case for a reason. Yes, I believe they should have made a statement by now. However, I believe with the evidence obtained, they know what didn't happen and likely have an idea what did happen. Well, that being in mind, some additional points mentioned here. We'll get to that later, of course. 58 comments or so. But I want to analyse over these claims and rumours. How true are they? How true are they to him being BS? And how true are they if they are misunderstood? Quite an interesting list that, but it's important to acknowledge how they came about or how they possibly could have. Was it originally stated with a level of confidence? Was it stated in a delusional way? Did a person purposely word it incorrectly in hopes of it sticking, and then the general public, yes men, yes women, just went along with it because there is a certain agenda against some people? Did a group or a mass hear it from a key person within the case, a victim's family member, supposedly police or something else, and it was incorrect, but people just went along with it because of the psychological effect, the influence, a higher-ended individual of a certain role, position, relevance to the case or knowledge and intelligence, but it has an overwhelming effect on the masses who will just go along with it because psychologically speaking, they think that that one knows more and has all the answers. So when you don't know, you'll look up to somebody else. But when they get it wrong, what do you do then? Might be too late by then because you don't know what to think anymore. So we've got to slow things down right now. These rumours over time. How much damage has it caused on the case? You let me know your thoughts down below, okay? Number 1, shredded fingers or shredded fingertips. What's that all about? Of course, applied to Noah Presgrove. The original claims originated somewhere on Facebook, no surprise, and then spread about and even onto my channel as well. Constant claims by many different people, spreading it, believing in it, and spreading. Are those people wrong for doing so? It's an unfortunate situation. There was supposed claims, I believe, that a key person within the case, whether it be an expert, whether it be a supposed family member of Noah Presgrove, had quoted it at one point, claiming that Noah's fingertips were shredded and the autopsy report stated it. So, based on that approach, it's understandable why the general public would believe in it because a key person said so, and then the message passes on from there. If it was originally worded and stated like that by a member of the general public, well then clearly there is a problem. Maybe in other ways it was through terrible communication and misunderstanding. A person states it one way and somehow Chinese whispers occurs and then the story changes and then it spreads like wildfire. Because it's quite a bold statement and it's to do with Noah, it will have an emotional weight behind it, which will influence people who will go along with it anyway. The reality is, the autopsy report, the one that was originally released publicly and stands till this day, publicly speaking, it does not mention shredded fingers. Shredded tips? No. Skin to the bone? No. I read the autopsy, it never mentioned it. Yet the general public kept going on and on about it. That is when it becomes a problem. Because if primarily the claim was, and it was stemmed from the autopsy, or it's claimed that that's where it comes from, and people just go along with it, and then someone like me looks at the autopsy and I say, it's not there, and other people say it is, we've got a big problem. If there is hard evidence which either supports it or goes against it, but people can't be bothered to look into it, that is an issue. Because like in other areas in the case, when you do finally have hard evidence, people are still not pleased by it. People still find a way to go against it, to complain about it, to say it's wrong, it's false. And in the case with the autopsy, all people could say is, well, it's in there somewhere. It was mentioned anyway that it's in the autopsy. It's not. Have you looked at the autopsy yourself? Or is it too much to do so? Are you just listening to the words of other people? Now, how detrimental is it, the false claim of shredded fingers? Well, it just pushes and reinforces a certain outcome of death, does it not? Now, it could go off in different directions, but one of which could be that Noah Presgrove was dragged, that there was some kind of foul play or murder, that Noah Presgrove was gripping himself, defending himself, defensive wounds, and whilst being beaten or attacked, that's what caused the friction and the skin being ripped off the fingers. Or if Noah Presgrove was tied to a moving vehicle and dragged along the ground and the friction over time, and depending on the environment and the surface, that's what caused it to rip off and erode. And maybe in other circumstances that is possible, but it's not mentioned in the autopsy officially. But for people to believe that it was, you can see how different outlooks on the cause of death can come about, and then the greater push for foul play, the greater push for murder, the greater push for the brutality and the outcome of Noah, which will hold an emotional candle under most people's minds and outlook on the case. Right? So, when you look back over it in general, when it comes to shredded fingers, they weren't shredded. So it ticks certain things off the list at this moment in time, as in, as brutal as it was Noah's death, that particular detail is non-existent. So it's not going to back up certain causes of death, and then it can't reinforce the possible murder aspects the same way. Did some people somewhere may have pushed the idea of shredded fingers in a manipulative way to push a false agenda, to make, even though it's already brutal anyway, the injuries, the outcome of Noah, but to extend it, exaggerate it even more, to play the emotional strings, to say that this is how Noah was at the time, that's how bad it really was. And it does support the idea of a murder, a beatdown, being dragged, making it even worse than what it already is. By nature, the outcome of Noah is brutal enough, right? Regardless of the cause of death. So why would anyone want to add on, attach unnecessary false injuries to Noah? To play the heartstrings, maybe. But if it's more so through just a simple misunderstanding that a person who's a higher up or regarded quite highly in the case, even a victim's family member, who may have stated it or passed it on from what they've been told, well then it's just like a food chain of false claims, false information? Is it done out of misinformation or disinformation? I would argue and say probably more so misinformation. But in terms of when I came across it, I wasn't convinced by it because I looked at the autopsy, it wasn't there, simple as. And whilst people did keep going round and round in circles about it, I just continued on. So it didn't cause me really any issues. You let me know if it caused you any issues, any headaches, any confusion, and so on. The next point mentioned, to do with Noah Presgrove supposedly walked in on Caleb Newton, Jack's father, doing inappropriate stuff, sexual activities with a minor. What do you got to take in consideration? Now, granted, there might be some exceptions with how it is in Oklahoma, certain laws and regulations, but that just might be an excuse by some people in the chat in recent time. I believe so, like Charlie, that incompetent individual. Whiner. Reality is, when you're 18 and up, you are a young adult. And for most part of it, there were adults at the party, with the exception of some that were under the age of 18, but likely over the age of 14 or 15. So yeah, they can be considered minors, but I guess the rest, maybe more so the majority, were around 18 and onwards. Not quite the correct age of legal drinking, of course. Noah Presgrove in the subpoena documents, I believe, classified him as a minor, which is a bit weird because Noah was a young adult. By calling him a minor sounds like sensationalism. Is that a certain motive or narrative behind the claims of Caleb doing something with a minor at the party? Because if Caleb was doing something with a young adult and there was consent and it's above the correct age, then I guess it can be considered okay. Morally, maybe not. If there's cheating involved, an affair going on, technically speaking. Because if Caleb is married or in a relationship with Rosa Newton and he's doing something with another person behind the back, it's not loyal, it's not faithful, it's not good. And the other person on the receiving end, if they're in a relationship with somebody else, it's not good. But we got to dial it back first of all, because the question what you got to ask yourself, is there any proof, any hard evidence to say that Caleb was at the party? Even Caden Pressey. So people from the light side that pushed the idea that Caleb was at the party, people from the light side that also look up to Caden Pressey, I think they need to listen to Caden Pressey more. Because in my own videos, from what I've summarised and passed on to you, from October 2023 onwards, Caden Pressey confirmed and said, whilst he was there, Caleb was nowhere to be seen. 100% confidence. That should be enough, right, to people out there that look up to Caden. So, if other people as well back it up that Caleb wasn't at the party, then how come the general public seem to know more than the partygoers as to who was there and who wasn't? It's a bit weird. Who was influenced in the first place by claiming Caleb was present? If you're stating it as a fact, were you influenced by somebody else before that claimed it? Or are you influenced by hard evidence? Because if you were, with hard evidence, fair enough. But publicly speaking, I've not seen any photos or any videos or snaps which show Caleb at the party. Simple as, right? In terms of performing a certain act with a minor, see, if this is all being created in an unnatural way, it comes across as if maybe someone somewhere down the line had an agenda against Caleb and hoped in some way that Caleb could be blamed or treated as a scapegoat even if he wasn't there, but trying to claim that he was. And on top of that, he was doing a bad thing towards a much younger, vulnerable person. as a means of getting revenge or as a means of just painting a bad picture of Caleb. So then Caleb gets punished, and exaggerating with the minor part because it could have been a younger adult of 18 or over. But from like what Caden said, no sign of Caleb actually at the party, and other partygoers not acknowledging it either about Caleb being there. From the public footage and photos, no sign of Caleb being there. So really, as long as Caleb wasn't at the party, and physical evidence seems to support that he wasn't there, and even what Caden Pressey states, well then the activity of doing something with a minor is non-existent and couldn't have happened. For as long as Caleb wasn't at the party, no sexual activity could have taken place from the claims made by the outsiders, the general public. But if it was in people's minds, if other people truly believe in it, the claims of with a minor, who exactly then? Who? Likely a female? Well, if so, who's a minor that's a female there? Georgia? Breely? Anyone else? I can't think of other people under the age of 18 who's a female that was at the party, personally speaking, again. But the possible aims and methods, furthermore, behind pushing the rumour of Caleb, not only being there, but also doing a bad act with an underage person to make him look really bad overall, to make him look like a monster. People may have been pushing it because it links onto the theory, the claim, and by some a statement that Noah Presgrove walked in on Caleb doing something, and that justifies or explains why Noah Presgrove died. Because he saw something he wasn't supposed to. He may have threatened or claimed to have went and told people, but before he could, he was silenced, as in killed. Directly by the hands of Caleb, Jack, or a group, who knows? But I think that's the origins behind pushing it in the first place. Because if Noah walks in on something and it needs to be kept a secret and Noah doesn't want to keep a secret, it makes sense as to being silenced if it's that important to holding that secret close, as in Caleb's mindset. But there's no hard evidence of Caleb being present at the party. So you can't say it did happen, and people have stated it as a fact. If other people on the sideline has stated it as a rumour, a suggestion, understandable, what you may think, what you may believe, but if you don't have the evidence to back it up or support it, it's just a theory or an idea. But of course, you've got to be very careful with how you word it, because if someone is dragged into it and is accused of breaking the law as well, and with an underage person, that can have huge negative side effects on that possible innocent person, physically, more so psychologically, and maybe with work and onwards in life. Just like when males are falsely accused of certain stuff, other people cry things, and then it ends up being that the male was innocent from the start, but the damage is already done. So you've got to consider that too. Is it forced in an unnatural way? Or is it along the same lines as the shredded fingertips, as in, well, a key person said it, so everybody else went along with it? Well, I think there's a bit more of thinking responsibly when it comes to the claim, the statement of Noah walking in on Caleb with a minor. I've heard it worded slightly different. It may have been modified in between, that Caleb was actually seen by Noah and Caleb was engaging with certain activities inappropriate with either Carter or Avery. Now, if they are over the age of 18 and onwards, then by law, nothing wrong has happened unless alcohol has been involved to get someone a little bit drunk and it is a consent problem. But I'm just going through the little possibilities. Still, morally, it wouldn't be good, but are people doing it to damage Caleb's reputation and image? Is it more an in-person, long-term grudge that some people may have with Caleb, and that's why they're trying to pin the blame on him, or link him to Noah's death, or the motive behind Noah's death, as in for Noah to walk in on it? Then maybe that's why Caleb and or others killed Noah, to bury the truth, to like dig and bury a dirty secret so no one else will ever know. Because, yeah, depending on the value of it, if you have a dirty secret and you don't want it to come out public, you'll probably claw and scratch and do as much as possible to keep it and to pin it down so it doesn't get released or leaked. And if there is an insider or an outsider that witnesses comes across it, you may panic, you may worry. And depending on what you value most, you may take direct action as a means of maintaining control, even if it means taking someone's life away. That is probably the case here, and that's what people have tried implementing within the case. But, you know, if it's done recklessly and it's stated as a fact, as like what some people have done when wording it, it's a bit too rash, it's a bit too impetuous, it can actually harm the case, it can slow down the case, and it can damage people's images, lives, if they do turn out to be innocent. Just like how JJ Bumpers was dragged into the case, and yet he supposedly was never ever at the party. Yet he was dragged through the mud. What good did that do in the end? So there's that needs to be acknowledged. But the other theme, Caleb, and putting, or yeah, something along the lines of Caleb with Noah Presgrove's tooth in his pocket, pulling it out of his pocket, sharing it, telling the police, as if, why would Caleb have Noah's tooth in his pocket already? Because Caleb was present with Noah earlier, when Noah was dying, in the process of it. Would that mean that Caleb knows more than others, but he's not letting on and he's keeping it a secret? Once again, a claim made about Caleb being dragged into the case, even though there's no real hard evidence to show Caleb with one of Noah's tooths in his pocket. This more so could come through a bit of a misunderstanding in language and communication, possibly. It might have been mentioned at some other time from top of my memory that Caleb was along the highway, noticed a tooth of Noah's on the ground, picked it up to alert police or someone, and then placed it back down, or was told to place it back down. And if that's truly the case, should Caleb have touched it in the first place? No, it's reckless, and it can be tampering with evidence, intentional or not. It's reckless, it doesn't help. If there was something there which the police didn't see or know, all Caleb had to do was just alert them and then point to the ground or so, right? But in terms of how it's been worded and rephrased, maybe Chinese whispers occurred that when people heard about Caleb picking up a tooth, it changed to Caleb was already holding a tooth, to then Caleb pulled out a tooth from his pocket. You can see how it is changed and modified the language and wording with time. Chinese whispers, to the point where it sounds more suspicious than what it actually was, turning kind of an innocent event into a suspicious event. Is it done with a certain unnatural agenda against Caleb in trying to find as much as possible to pin the blame on him? And if something does involve him, but it's innocent, to try and twist and manipulate the words to make it seem much worse than it actually is? That's always possible. But I think by the masses of people at a certain point, once again, originating from Facebook, I believe, I think it's more so through miscommunication and a misunderstanding with wording and the sentence structure. Like Caleb from my memory, came across a tooth on the ground, picked it up to have a look, maybe collared the police, then placed it down. But somehow people interpreted it as pulling it out of his pocket. Of course, there's a big difference between picking it from the ground and then pulling it from your pocket. Pulling it from your pocket implies you already had it earlier or at some point, which then could suggest that you were there before the police, before others. You may know more than others, and because you're not saying much, it sounds like you're keeping it a secret. So what do you know? So it can benefit some people, of course, by pushing that claim and statement along with the previous one to benefit by pinning the blame on Caleb. But at what cost? It might slow down the investigation, especially if it turns out to be a waste of time. And at the other cost, once again, impacting Caleb to some extent if he did turn out to be innocent, right? The next point mentioned, a party the next weekend. That has been mentioned, and who by exactly? I believe it was either Justin Roy or Caden Pressey. I do believe Caden Pressey said it at least once, whether it be his public interview or more so the private, never released part 2 Partners in True Crime interview. I do remember it being worded along the lines of that. However, there could have been a misunderstanding because, as I'm saying from my memory, I'm being honest with you, what I do remember it being mentioned in one of the interviews, and I believe it was by Caden, is that the weekend before there was a previous party. And that's been brought up, I believe, by Jan Fiorillo and some others, that when it came to that Netflix documentary and Jan Fiorillo was giving a piece of her mind, she mentioned that a similar style of party with similar party goers at the same location, the party house, a week before the final party which Noah attended and died at, or near to. The weekend before, someone reported it to police and no action was taken. And then maybe the same reported again the following week, the one where Noah died. Okay? So, whether it be through miscommunication and misunderstanding, a person has claimed that a party did take place, but it was the weekend before. And then another person or group is saying, stating, or suggesting that another party happened after the following weekend. Is there a big difference in the impact it has? Yes, in different ways, of course, because if a party did take place the following weekend post-death of Noah, it kind of reinforces the ideas and outlook of coldness, not respecting or honouring Noah, too busy partying and enjoying life, makes it seem like the friends of Noah don't really care and are more interested in getting drunk and continuing on, which is probably one of the components which could have led to Noah's death, and no honouring that, but just carrying on drinking, just like how they did the week before, the party that Noah died at or near to, right? Who would be pushing it? Well, you could say those that think the party goers are responsible or hiding something, they would probably more agree or go along with the claims of a party following the next weekend. But it comes down to who you listen to, right? Jan Fiorillo was claiming that a party took place the weekend before. But then in one of the interviews, whether it be Justin Roy or Caden Pressey and so on, one of which at least claimed that there was a party the next weekend. I can't remember if Caden Pressey acknowledged that or if he also acknowledged the weekend before. If a party took place a weekend before, well, what really happened? Nothing. Was there any death? No. Did Noah attend that party? Not too sure. It could raise questions as to why, well, if you had a party the weekend before and Noah was present and alcohol was as well in similar faces, how come Noah didn't die then? But how come he died the next weekend party then? What changed? what's so different between them when they're in a short space of time between them, right? In terms of the questions of if a party took place the next weekend post-death of Noah, you could say, do people care? Are people having a party to try and drown the pain out because they just don't care, because they're responsible? Their party is actually getting together to set their stories, plans straight, to create a pact and keep a secret together. Different ways you can look at it, right? So the claims of a party next weekend supposedly never happened. I mean, at the end of the day, is there any hard evidence to say that it did or it didn't happen? I'd say I've not seen any hard evidence to support it or to debunk it, basically. And like with some of the earlier points, from the looks of it, based on hard evidence, visually speaking, the exception of the shredded fingers, because at least hard evidence documents don't acknowledge it, even though the general public do. There's a difference there. But the claims of Caleb doing this or that, no photos, no videos of it. It's just all words at the end of the day. So you can choose to believe in it or choose to remain skeptical. Personal choice, end of the day. And as for a party the next weekend, well, is there any Snapchats, any photos, videos to support it? I've yet to see that. Is there any Snapchats or videos to prove that there was a party the weekend before? I'm yet to see that as well. But I think it would be interesting to compare a weekend before, the party footage, with the one that Noah attended, to see if there was any changes or differences in atmosphere and combinations of people that were there at the party. Okay? So, it's important to acknowledge these claims as BS, but then to also counter it with, are you sure it's BS? Is it possible to remain on the fence about it? And so on. I'm not going to have all the hard evidence to counter everything, right? Because it might not be accessible. But I am basing it on what I know of in the case and what I can remember. And you can always fill out the blanks and gaps if you want, or add on to, such as with the comment section. You're welcome to do so. So, next point mentioned, fishing trip was BS and they still went fishing. Well, to my knowledge, that they were supposed to be doing a fishing trip, but it was cut short because as soon as Jack was on the highway driving down, pulled over because of what was at the highway, and the plan was cancelled. And at 6:05, Jack called his father, and his father took maybe 40 minutes to get on down to the highway. And because of that outcome and what was going on, things put on hold or just outright cancelled. Makes sense. It's what normally can happen, right? But it's like two parts to that, as in they still went fishing. That's claimed as BS, a rumour. At least from what we've heard in the case and how it's been stated, at least, they didn't go fishing. But people are claiming that they did go fishing. How would people benefit there by stating that they did go fishing to maybe push an agenda or a narrative? Well, if they were to go fishing, they could be going to the lake to dispose of possible evidence, hence why some items are missing. So it can support that idea of foul play, but more forced in an unnatural way by some people out there. But the mention of fishing trip was BS in the first place, and that's a rumour, but it turned out to be a genuine thing, a genuine event which turned out not to take place because of the highway and what was found there. Why would it be BS in the first place? Why would people be pushing that claim that the fishing trip never happened, but also say that it went on and did happen? It's a bit of a contradiction there. I mean, there was a claim by some people, I believe, from the dark side, that were claiming that the fishing trip did happen, but not on that day. It was the weekend after or so. That it was being planned, but not on that particular day to happen. Which is weird, because at least from hard evidence and screenshot text conversations, it shows at 5:53, Jack was getting ready and claiming and saying, right, to his father Caleb, meet at Warwick Lake at the ramp woke up late, got ready late, will relocate at the lake itself, direct. And then Jack went on down, anticipating that, but then was halted quick because of coming across Noah on the highway, unexpected. So just based on text messages and the timestamps, it does seem to imply that we're in the process of going fishing, but then plans were halted abruptly because of what was found shortly after coming up. So the original point about a fishing trip never really taking place or a load of rubbish, why would people be pushing that rumour, pushing that claim? How do people benefit from that? As in, people believing that the likes of Jack and anyone else claiming that a fishing trip was to take place were just used as a cover-up, some kind of alibi, so it benefits them, makes them look innocent, but yeah, they were going in that direction anyway, or Jack was at least, because of the fishing trip, but actually for other reasons. Maybe the general public, some could have been pushing that concept, but when there's hard evidence to suggest at a certain time plans of what was going to happen, you got to take that into consideration, right? So maybe more forced and unnatural, that rumour claim, because if there is some kind of evidence along the way to counter it, but people just look over it or don't bother and keep pushing it, it does seem a bit unnatural. The next rumour, Noah Presgrove asking everyone for a ride home. Now, one thing that Mike didn't mention, but it probably it's included in that, is the rumour of Noah Presgrove calling his father Victor Presgrove for a ride home and Victor denying Noah of that. Quite a sharp and important one, that, because it was backed up with hard evidence as a counterpoint, where Victor Presgrove responded back to someone individually, but outright said, Noah Presgrove did not contact me. My son did not contact me about ever wanting to go home. And if it was the case, then he would have been given a lift home, along the lines of that, right? So it seems like the general public seem to know more than the father Victor. Says a lot, doesn't it? Now, whilst Victor, from the looks of it, wasn't at the party, is in contact with Dylan via phone, text messages, call logs, and why would the general public push and claim that Noah was reaching out to his father and his father denied him, when the father outright said, Noah never reached out to me? Why would the general public know more, and why would the general public state it as a fact when it turned out it wasn't true? And not only was it a rumour, it was a complete lie from the looks of it. Why would anyone from the general public push the idea? Well, I think that's more through a misunderstanding, because at some point somewhere, I believe, whether it be a conversation, messenger, or if it be a post on Facebook, there was mentions of Casey Smith having it out with Victor, and either a misunderstanding of language and wording, Casey blaming Victor, or for something else involving Noah. And people read it and interpreted it as if Casey was yelling and blaming Victor Presgrove because Noah wanted a ride home and Victor did not give Noah a ride home. Along the lines of that. Could have been through a misunderstanding of language and wording, so then it spread like Chinese whispers, and then people just stuck with it and thought, wow, okay, then it must be true, and constantly going back over it over and over again, when in the end it led to Victor Presgrove speaking out and saying, Noah never called me, so I wouldn't know, right? But if it more so stems from what Casey outright said, the biological mother to Noah, having a go at Victor and outright blaming him because of no ride given home, then it's more so Casey supposedly doesn't know the full story or didn't in the moment. But because it's the biological mother, because it's the victim's family member, it's understandable why the general public would listen to what Casey says and believe it as a fact and then roll with it from there. Just like how some other claims have come about because it's what Robin Smith, the aunt to Noah, has said from what she was told by police, and then people roll with that. Just like how Jack Newton states certain things and then people may go along with it or re-quote it because it's what Jack is saying based on what police told him. So there's layers to it, okay? Sometimes it's directly from the horse's mouth, from what they know of, and you listen to it and nod your heads. Other times it's not quite from the horse's mouth, but a key person who's then been told by the horse's mouth, and it's passed on like a chain, a food chain. And people are fed truth, and other times people are fed lies, and then other times people are fed misinformation or misunderstandings, and then it spreads and widens. But as I said, if it always comes from the general public in the first place, that's where the mistake is. And it needs to be acknowledged. It's not good though if it's within the case and mistakes are made and people do F up there, because you'd hope to be able to look up in a hopeful way and think that they would be able to handle it better, but it doesn't always work like that. Mistakes can be made. So that was one of the few that was cleared up. A rumour or a false statement by a range of different people. It's spreading like wildfire. And then of 2025, some months ago, Victor Presgrove finally broke his silence and set the record straight. And why did it take him so long? Because he wasn't aware of all the claims before that, because he was, I guess, not active or that busy on social media, so he probably didn't see it. And then someone directly asked him a question about it, and that's why he responded, right? But there was a response and it was cleared. So how do people gain or benefit from blaming or saying that Noah wanted a ride home, called his father, was denied, and the general public doing it in such a way that they want to paint Victor in a negative way, to make him look uncaring, to try and pin the blame of Noah's death onto Victor? I don't think it's done with malicious intent there. I think it's more so through either misunderstanding of what somebody else had said within the case or within a separate conversation to Victor, and then the words were either twisted or just misunderstood and people jumped the gun emotionally. People who are emotionally charged in the moment or in the case in general may look over words, misunderstand the sentence structuring and read it as something else, which is not meant that way. And then it explodes and is out of control from there. But in terms of the original claim and rumour, which has been mentioned by Mike from what others have said with time and claiming it to be the case that Noah Presgrove asked everyone at the party for a ride home. Well, technically not the case, because not so much party goers, but people that were present on site at the party house when it came to Breely's, at least two sisters, older sisters, picking Georgia and Breely up from the party to take them back home. One of Breely's sisters, speaking on behalf of the actual sisters that attended the party to pick him up, said, "Weren't aware that Noah Presgrove wanted a lift home. If we knew, we would have given him a lift back home." Maybe by that point Noah Presgrove didn't want a lift anymore. Or maybe Noah Presgrove was doing other things and didn't see the opportunity at the time. I mean, it's Caden Pressey that worded it in the first place. So if it is a rumour, it came from Caden Pressey's mouth, and then the general public were influenced by it and nodded their heads and went along with it. It's understandable in the early days why you would go along with it, because you think Caden Pressey is telling the truth and he's being honest, which is understandable. Like, Caden Pressey is a partygoer and a witness to it happening, so he should know more, right? But it did unfold and implode that with the months and months passing by during a live premiere of mine in the live chat, Caden Pressey in the past went from saying, "I saw Noah reaching out to many different people at the party for a ride home and being rejected," to Caden months later saying, "I did not see Noah reach out to people. I couldn't identify those faces or names. However, I did overhear Noah speaking to people about a ride home." So first of all, it shows that Noah wasn't exactly asking literally everyone at the party, just a handful of people from the wording of Caden. And secondly, Caden didn't fully witness it. He only overheard. Yet Caden in the early days stated it as if he saw it with his own eyes. If you see it with your own eyes, you would be more than likely to know who it was and how many Noah approached. If you're just overhearing it in the back of your head, back of your ears, whilst there's other noise at the party, you're not going to be able to count or register every single person Noah's reaching out to. So yeah, it could be true that Noah wanted a ride home and he reached out to a few people, but not everyone at the party. So the general public, some pushing it as in everyone, because it's an emotional gripping word. Everyone is more bold and carries more weight and exaggerated, basically, by saying everyone knows this and everyone knows that. Similar to when Justin Roy did a poll on one of the Facebook pages, and then Justin said 95% of people believe this is the case with Noah Presgrove, the outcome. But Justin, how he worded it was 95% of the human race on this earth believes it to be this or that. Justin didn't word it as, well, 95% of people voting on this poll, with a total of maybe 6,000 members on the Facebook page, 95% of so many voters on a particular page, a smaller sample size of people believe it to be this or that, not the whole world. Miscommunication you can see and where it can lead to. It's problematic, you could put it that way. So I would still say more so the claim and exaggeration of Noah asking everyone for a ride home. You can't blame the general public completely for that rumour when it stems back to Caden Pressey in the first place that worded it as if Noah was reaching out to many people, if not everyone, right? Maybe the term everyone isn't what Caden used himself, so maybe the general public are to blame for that. You know, exaggerating with the odd word, tweaking it in an unnatural way, but still, Caden kind of set it off the tone about witnessing Noah asking for a ride home. It got the interest of the general public. Did Noah Presgrove want a ride home because he was sick of the party, because he was scared, because he was in danger and he needed to get away, and because people turned him down and rejected it? It's what led ultimately to Noah being trapped and then dying that way, so then the general public can then some blame partygoers for delaying or stalling or denying Noah of life and so on. Caden Pressey had said, right, it eats him up knowing that if he had given Noah a ride back home, he might have been okay and safe, but Caden also knew that because of, in 2018, getting in trouble with police because of drinking and sleeping in a vehicle parked up, didn't want to get in trouble again. So there's only so much you can do, of course. But when you got a designated driver like Carter Combs, wouldn't the simple answer be for Noah to reach out to Carter Combs at the party? Did that ever happen? Who knows? Because Caden's not confirmed it. Caden doesn't really know himself. So how are the general public supposed to know? I guess only Carter Combs would know whether Noah approached her or not for a ride home. She's a designated driver, meaning she is capable of driving and not getting in trouble because she's not drunk. So you'd think Noah would have reached out to her specifically, but who knows? It's unknown of. But the term everyone being asked for a ride home, Noah asking, that's a bit of a stretch because there's no evidence to fully support that. Especially when Caden, who's a witness, can't even back it up himself because he's limited to what he actually saw. More so, he didn't really see anything, he just overheard it. And yet, how he worded it originally, he saw it, then later changed it to, I heard it. There's a big difference between hearing something and seeing it. So, beside that problematic one, the claim of Jack Newton begging Noah to come back to the party. It could well be true that Jack at least called Noah to come back to the party. As for the contents of the call log, the time, the actual audio of that call, unknown of. We've not seen it, we've not heard it. Will we ever? Don't know. But Jack Newton begging Noah to come back sounds a bit exaggerated yet again. Did the general public more so push that outlook? Probably more so. There was a post by Justin Roy that I believe it was to do along with that particular event, where Justin said, well, I have received wrong information. It came from elsewhere, false claims, wrong information about Jack begging Noah back. And in the end, there was no actual proof to say that that did happen in terms of the begging aspect. Right, so it might have been wrong information, but was it pushed anyway in the earlier days? Yes. Were people easily pleased by it and went along with it? Technically, yes. But where did it ultimately come from? Who was the horse's mouth that said it in the first place? Was it said with a level of venom? Was it done in a manipulative way? Was it done with intent to make Jack look suspicious and bad because someone's got a grudge or a problem with him? So they want to make Jack look as bad as possible, make it look as dodgy as possible. And how do people benefit by pushing the aspect of begging Noah to come back? Because one, Noah Presgrove did come back. It can be backed up by the snaps, the photos, the timing, the timestamps of Noah actually being there Sunday onwards Monday morning. So whatever Jack said on the phone was enough to convince Noah to come back. Now the actual motive for why Noah left in the first place, who knows? We don't know. As in on Sunday after breakfast, did Noah leave and not want to return back to the party house because he wanted to do other things on the day? He had enough. Who knows? It's unknown of. But in terms of Jack begging Noah to come back, it benefits the general public for pushing that aspect, because the act of begging someone to return back to a party to then ultimately end up dead kind of implies from a theory that Jack was desperate for Noah to be back at the party, so then they have him in their hands and grasp, and then they can do whatever they like to Noah and finish him off. But a plan was set up in the process of when Noah was absent. So then when a plan was conducted of how to get revenge or how to hurt, how to kill Noah, they needed Noah for the final component. So emotional language, persuasive language. Please, Noah, come back. We want you. We need you. You're the heart and soul of the party. Please. We'll give you some more alcohol, supposedly. So then Noah does come back and is convinced and doesn't take his vehicle, even more convenient for some at the party. So then there's no escape for Noah Presgrove if he doesn't have his own vehicle to escape him. So once Noah Presgrove is at the party and drunk and so on, from one event to another, he's an easier target, possibly. And for Jack earlier to be begging Noah back, was Jack also begging Noah to be back, so then it's easier to kill him and finish him off by the hands of Jack himself or somebody else? That's how people online can interpret it. That may push the idea of Jack begging Noah back. Now, I've made references to it, but I have also mentioned that. Have we heard the call logs? Have we seen the proof of that and the actual contents of the call to support it? No. And from what Justin Roy has said, of all people, to say that it was wrong information and it wasn't exactly correct about the begging part, well, it's kind of like ticked off as in it didn't happen. The call did occur, but the begging did not, or at least there's no evidence to support that. But anyone that was pushing it at some point, was it done in a natural way as a form of misunderstanding, or was it done as a means of pure intent to cause problems in the case and for party goers? You let me know what you think about that personally, because there's a difference between begging someone to come back and just asking someone to come back if they want to come, if they want to return. But outright begging sounds like desperation. And why are you so desperate to have someone back at the party? Because you want to tell them something, you want to show them something, you need to physically be in their presence for something to happen. And just by coincidence that Noah Presgrove ends up dying onwards. If Noah Presgrove never went back, he would have still been alive up to a certain point. So the act of begging Noah to come back is that also begging and hoping that Noah does come back, so then they've got him in their sights, so then they can then do whatever to Noah. Well, the general public, some people could push that idea and then add it onto the exaggeration of the word exaggeration to the begging aspect. So it went on so long that as well, that claim, that supposed rumour, which was deemed or treated as a fact by some people. So once again, reckless language used by the general public to some extent. Okay. Next mention, shorts neatly folded at the scene. Well, based on the context of that, because some people believe in it and other people don't. Some people say it did happen, but not by Jack and so on. From what I remember, and I believe it was the People article, white shorts were in the middle of the road, in the middle of the highway. In terms of observable damage, none. But in terms of cleanliness, any stains, prints or marks, no acknowledgement of that. And I believe that's how it is with the autopsy report as well. The People article stated I believe it was the People article, it was a news article at least, that stated Jack Newton picked up the white shorts in the middle of the highway, was going to take them back to the bed of his truck, placing them in. Police guy then ordered him to take them back out and put them down. And then I believe in the moment or a bit later, the police guy folded them near to Noah's body. So, at some point when the full context wasn't quite there, the concept of white shorts just being folded up, found near to Noah's body without any context, left people scratching their heads, and I was analysing, thinking, well, there has to be foul play in some way if Noah's found with folded shorts already beside him and he's naked. Noah probably unlikely to be folding shorts up to then die. More than likely, Noah dies and then somebody else then folds the shorts up before police get there, but that's without context. The context added is that, yeah, Jack picked them up, put them in the back of the truck. Why? Because Jack supposedly felt like if they were left on the highway in the middle of the road, they could be damaged by oncoming vehicles passing by, so just move them out the way. Makes sense. But then for the police guy to order him to put them back, or just to put them down, to then fold them themselves, the police, and near to Noah's body. Okay. Was the police guy wearing gloves when folding them up? You'd hope to think so. Was Jack Newton though when he originally moved them in the first place? Likely not. So you can argue and say it's reckless by Jack to be moving white shorts at the scene when it technically is tampering with evidence. Maybe it's not done with intent to tamper, and it's more done so out of trying to preserve them from oncoming traffic, running them over. I get that. The only thing that is a bit weird is for Jack to be able to pick them up, put them in the back of the truck, and then the police guy only then orders Jack to put them back. What was the police guy doing when Jack was about to pick them up? Were they looking the opposite way? Were they not paying attention? Ideally, the best outcome for that, just like with the Caleb Newton situation, is if you see something, report it. Let the police know. Hey, there's a tooth there. Instead of picking it up, get the police to do it. Hey, there's white shorts in the middle of the road. I think they need to be moved before they're damaged. Then the police can decide whether they move them or not. And if they've got gloves, fine, it's not going to tamper, go over evidence. But for someone like Jack Newton, who probably didn't have gloves to be picking up shorts, your touch-based DNA is going to be on those white shorts. Technically, they are your shorts, so it's your personal possession. You should be somewhat entitled to pick them up and move them about. But because it's at the scene and it's treated as evidence, you should know better not to touch it. And if you felt that they were in danger of being destroyed or damaged by oncoming vehicles, just tell the police. So that's from what I can remember in the People article. I guess maybe a rumour or a suggestion by People about shorts being neatly folded up without the context. Some may have been thinking, oh, was it Jack that folded them? Was it another person besides police? Well, it appears to be police. Is it a massive attempt to push foul play? I don't think so. It might just be more so confusion and not knowing the full context. Bit of an innocent mistake there, personally. Don't think it was absolutely detrimental to the case, because if there are articles out there which back it up or set the record straight, supposedly you just go to them and spread the message from there, right? I'm basing it off from my memory of the different articles that I saw, and there was a burst of it where there was People articles left, right and centre. Beside that, next rumour, people from the party didn't cooperate. Well, there's no hard evidence publicly to say that they did cooperate. There's no hard evidence publicly to say that they didn't cooperate. All you can base it off is your own opinion, and on top of that, from what certain people from the dark side say. Family are family, friends are family, that state, well, the girls fully cooperated, and 5 of them at least fully cooperated and interviewed early. And then other people were interviewed later, or there was delays, and so on. There's not really much to go off from that, but, you know, if people were making the claims without any evidence and recklessly stating that people from the party didn't cooperate by claiming it that way based on the fact that the case hasn't been solved yet, based on certain things truly not adding up. And technically, partygoers should know, but because they're not saying anything, then it must mean that they're not cooperating. But it depends where partygoers are at certain times and what they were doing. If they were nowhere to be around now at the time of his death, then they're simply not going to know, right? So it will come down to hard evidence and background evidence, which just isn't public, so you're not going to know. And if you don't know, you can't be making full-on claims and bold statements and facts, because it can be reckless at times, just like how people do that with Jack Newton by saying he is the killer. He killed Noah Presgrove. Other people may say, I think Jack's responsible. I think that person may know more or hiding a secret. That's fine, appropriate language, but then other people are just making it as a fact without evidence, and that's reckless. Of course, you can argue there and say, well, those from the dark side, family are family, friends are friends, to the partygoers that say, well, the girls have fully cooperated, Jack has cooperated, the interviews have gone underway and early on, and phones process, and it's all A-OK and above board. You have to take people's word for that, but you can still argue and say it's hearsay because it's not directly from the horse's mouths. So yeah, still on the fence, you can put it that way on how you can treat it. But an outright claim that people from the party didn't cooperate sounds reckless when it's not backed up with hard evidence, just words only. And by saying that people from the party, supposedly that's how it was worded, it's very vague, which could incorporate Caden Pressey of all people. I'm sure people wouldn't be thinking like that though. Anyway, next point mentioned the claim rumour of Caden Pressey's account verified and was given to police and Noah Presgrove's family. Caden's account, I guess tying in with Caden's phone data as well. The problem is, it's all over the place there, and it ultimately stems back to Caden and his mum, Alicia. The general public can say many different things and change with time and can be led in circles, and it can be all over the place and confusing. You can't blame the general public for that entirely. You know, when you look at Partners in True Crime Part 2 interview that was never publicly released, Alicia, Caden's mum, outright said that Caden's phone was taken in by police and processed, and it backs up Caden's 5:15 timeline as proof. Caden was sat beside Alicia and did not contest. So many months ago now, Caden Pressey outright said on, I think it was either Facebook or YouTube comment section, Caden mentioned about how he's not been treated as a person of interest, or he's not been interviewed for the obvious reason that he's not involved, but also that he obviously doesn't have much of interest on his phone because the police don't want it. That the police never took Caden's phone, never asked for Caden's phone, never processed Caden's data on it. Well, if that's what Caden knows and believes, well, then it is what it is. But for Alicia to say it was taken by police, and yet Caden says it never has been, the mother says one thing, the son says something completely different. Who are you supposed to believe in? So some members of the general public could say, well, Caden's phone was taken in by police and processed, and it's all confirmed of 5:15 being true. Yeah, that's what Alicia says. Caden Pressey has said, roughly in his words, that police never took his phone, don't see it of much interest, and pretty much it. But at the same time, Caden's still sticking with his timeline of 5:15, saying it's true and it's correct. You may believe in that because you believe in yourself and you just truly believe in it, fair enough, but do the police believe in it? Well, it doesn't matter because they don't need to know, they don't want to know because it's not deemed as interesting enough. But it should be of the interest of the police to tick things off the list regardless, right? So you could say maybe it's a failure by police, but ultimately it's first of all, it's trying to determine who's right and who's wrong. Is Alicia correct with the original claim of the phone being taken in by police, or is Caden correct about his phone never being taken by police? Which way round is it? It's like multiple layers before you even get on to the importance and the factors of the phone and it being proven to be correct or not, the 5:15 timestamp. is about, first of all, trying to understand whether it was taken by police or not. That still has not been solved till this day. I mean, there might have been a phase or a period where it seemed as if it was clear as to what happened with the phone and how it was handled. Possibly there was a time where Caden Pressey, in his words, was saying how it took him many months to get an interview with police, and he constantly tried giving the police his phone, but they didn't want it. But then it might have been worded, I can't remember clearly, that the police finally took his phone. Well, if that's what Caden said at some point very early on, fair enough, and then Alicia backs it up later. But then it doesn't explain Caden Pressey a few months ago outright saying the police never took my phone in the first place. It's like a complete U-turn. And I don't think enough people from a certain side acknowledge it enough. I think maybe if I can find it, I'll probably do another video about it, possibly. But I think that particular rumour or claim isn't primarily by the hands or blame of the general public, right? It's a bit divided and split and all over the place. There might be some other areas and factors within the case in which there might be a division with the general public, different pages and different sides. But the middleman, the middle factor, is to blame for the poor communication and delivery of saying one thing, then changing it, and then switching it and causing so much confusion. It causes so much confusion amongst different sides, but then have a go at each other and tear each other's heads off, which isn't necessary to begin with. So it's a bit of a messy one, that. Now, moving on to some additional points. There was physical altercations at the party. Well, where is the hard evidence to say that there was altercations? Where is the hard evidence to suggest that there wasn't? All we can base it on is what Justin Roy said. Justin Roy wasn't at the party, but some of his nephews were. So ultimately, was it the nephews that saw altercations and physicality and then passed it on to Justin, and then Justin passed it on to the general public? If so, okay. But it's not directly from the horse's mouth, is it? Okay? The only other mention of altercations is by the hands of, not so much physically, but verbally, as it's worded in the wrongful death lawsuit in more so recent time, claiming that Avery and Jack had a verbal fight with Noah Presgrove. Did it turn physical? Who knows? But a form of altercation, right, needs to be acknowledged. No video footage, no photos of fighting in a bad way, in a negative way, or even arguing. Most, if not all, of the party footage, what we've seen publicly, has been positive, calm, or people laughing and joking. So it makes it hard to believe that there was a physical altercation when we've yet to see it, right? But there might always be that possibility that somewhere there could be some hard evidence in the background that may prove it or show it, but at this moment in time, it's just not. It doesn't really exist, but you can still do it as a theory. Not as a fact, but as a theory, a supposed concept based on an event, okay? But who would have been influenced? Well, the whole physical and altercations, it's not really being pushed that much, even though it's quite an important critical component in the case in general. Justin Roy was one of the earlier ones to talk about like a physical altercation, that worded by him specifically that the Saturday night, more so past midnight going into Sunday morning, argument between Noah Presgrove and Jack Newton, that was physical, it was aggressive, but there was pushing and shoving, and Caden Pressey had to intervene and break the fight up. But as for the next argument between Noah and Jack on the Monday, that wasn't aggressive. That's what Justin said. So how does Justin know that it got physical? How does Justin know that Caden had to break the fight up? And more so, why did Caden say that, well, Saturday, the night, the party was all fine and normal, nothing wrong going on? So what does that mean? There might have been an argument, but it wasn't that big of a deal for Caden to mention it or bring it up. But it may have not been aggressive and there was no pushing and Caden didn't need to break it up? Or has Caden failed to include that detail? Justin says one thing, Caden Pressey says another. Who's right, who's wrong? Caden, who was physically at the party, or Justin that wasn't at the party but seems to know what happened at the party? Once again, Justin did have a family that was at the party, so they could have passed on information, which is possible. But still, what are you dealing with? First-hand witness, Caden, that says what he says, but also can be inconsistent and makes mistakes and contradicts himself, as we've seen, and isn't consistent, and there's discrepancies. Or do you more so believe in Justin Roy that wasn't there but is passing it on, basing it off second-hand witness reports, like a food chain? It's not really a great selection, is there? You would wish and hope that you hear it from the horse's mouth or someone that was physically there in the moment to see it take place and accurately give details as to what happened. Justin describes it with more detail, with more impact. Caden, said Noah was yelling at Jack and that was mainly it. No physicality, no fighting, no breaking up a fight. Yet Justin says that's what did happen. So who are you supposed to believe in? It creates a bit of a divide as to who you believe in. How does anyone benefit? Well, the concept of it being a form of altercation on the Saturday or early Sunday morning, how do you benefit there? I guess if there's a form of physicality, is that leading on to Noah's death? Well, not really, because if it's the Saturday or Sunday, that's not the day Noah died, unless people try and word it as, well, there was a grudge. There was a bit of a physical fight, and it was just a foreshadowing of what was to come next, but worse for Noah. Maybe you could push that outcome. It was specifically an altercation in the moment on the day of Noah's death, and people were drunk. You could say it's a cocktail of a chemical disaster where alcohol, emotions running high, aggression levels, a fight, a disagreement, an argument, getting physical, getting out of hand, and then ultimately leading to Noah dying, whether it's done with intent or not. You can see the components there, how it can escalate. So those that may push or claim that there was a physical fight, an altercation, do they also believe that naturally that's what leads on to Noah's death? Or do they believe it doesn't link to Noah's death, but it's an actual event that took place at the party? That would be a more natural way of thinking. But when Caden, who is a witness, that doesn't back it up what Justin says, that's a bit of a problem. So once again, it's a messy situation. By the hands of the general public, they're not really to blame. They listen to what Justin say, they listen to what Caden says, and maybe the wrongful death lawsuit. And 2 against 1 rule that there was a form of altercation, verbal or physical. 1 physical and aggressive on the Saturday night, Sunday morning past midnight, what Justin says, between Noah and Jack fighting, pushing and shoving. But then Monday wrongful death lawsuit claims and states that it was Jack and Avery against Noah, and it was a verbal fight. And a verbal fight can escalate, of course, too. And more relevant, closer to the time of Noah's death, because it's on the day of Noah's death, unlike the Saturday night, Sunday morning fight. But at the end of the day, it's all words. Have we actually seen any snaps, any photos, any videos of an actual fight? No, it's just words based on what other people say, and the 2 against 1 that claim there is a form of altercation, fighting in some way, verbal or physical, are said by people that weren't even there at the party. Right? That's a bit of a problem itself. Now, if Caden Pressey said, yes, there was a bit of physicality, okay. Said by a witness, as said by another person who wasn't even there, there's a bit of consistency. Just like how Robin Smith, Ashley Chadwick, and Casey Smith, while they might not all see eye to eye or get on with Casey, they all individually say the same thing, that the golf clubs and bag are missing. Simple as. That's what you want. You want individual bodies, individual people to all be on the same wavelength and state the same things without any influencer effect, without any researcher effect. Keep it all natural, what people truly believe in, what they've truly seen or not seen of. And then as more and more people say the same thing without being influenced or knowing of one another saying the same stuff or knowing the same things, just makes it more natural and more believable. We're yet to see that. So you can look at it either way. Maybe there was altercations at the party, maybe there wasn't. A witness like Caden doesn't acknowledge it, but a non-witness claims that there was. It's a problem. You can understand how the general public could be a bit confused and not sure what to believe in, or might go down one route and then change it to the other. And from the party footage, the atmosphere mainly seems, if not all, positive. Things can always change and escalate, but we're yet to see negative footage at the party. So, if it will ever come out, who knows? Even the claim of Mikey Lair fish hooking Noah when it came to trying to find Mikey's phone and thought Noah stole it or hid it, which wasn't the case, and it was actually supposedly Caden Presgrove was either covering it when resting on a chair or so, and Noah bit Mikey's finger when being fish hooked. Misunderstanding, a little bit tense maybe. Did we see footage of it? Nope. Avery Carter on the front porchway arguing post Noah going missing, walking away. No hard evidence publicly yet. These little components could fill in grey areas, of course. Could tick things off the list, could reinforce, could debunk the rumours, but yet to see it, so what you meant to believe. So it can go either way. You can look at it either way. You shouldn't be blamed for it either. So is it an outright rumour? It comes across as a rumour. I mean, from what Justin had said in that Partisan True Crime interview, he didn't directly word it as, well, this happened and that happened based on what my cousin, based on what my nephew, things like that, told me. You just basically said, well, I had people that were down at the party and so on, and this happened and that happened and this happened and that happened. But how do you know? Because Justin is talking as if he was there. The language and wording should have been more so based on, like, saying, well, this supposedly happened from what I've been told, from what my nephew told me, insert name or something like that. This is what went down. But I wouldn't say it was made that clear, right? It's like, based on the wording by some, they're talking as if they were there, but they also say that they weren't, so they shouldn't be wording it as if they were, right? Anyway, what else do we have? Wasn't blood at the scene? To be honest, it could well be a rumour which people have brought up. More so, the general point by a certain stretch of people is that there is blood, there just isn't enough to justify it. That the blood must be elsewhere, in another spot, a different location. The odd expert has backed that up. But then other experts online and articles have suggested that, well, because of how the person died and dying quickly, there wouldn't have been enough time for blood to continue on pumping out. It would have just stopped or something and been absorbed, reabsorbed in the body, and only so much would have leaked out. If it is a true rumour, because I haven't seen it myself, the outright rumour of no blood whatsoever, that's reckless, right? There was blood. It's been mentioned in articles, it's been mentioned in your autopsy report. Sheeting and stuff over the body and it being absorbed, the blood that way. Also just recent, it was said by Brooke Bounds Carter, who had a conversation with someone that was at the scene, and it only just came out recent, which is interesting. The claim of there was ruts in the ground, the rumble strips near or under Noah's body in which blood collected in, to justify there was hidden blood which people didn't see at the time or so. So it looked like there was less, but there was actually more there, or more than enough. I mean, it was marked by the police that there was some other patches of redness deemed as blood, which turned out not to be blood. Did the police clear that up? No. Did the articles update it? No. So that's not a good look, is it? As in misunderstandings by professionals, doesn't do much good for the case. But, you know, for the most part of it, people that talk about blood are mainly saying there's not enough blood at the highway, so it must mean that Noah died elsewhere. Are people pushing it in a manipulative way that... No, it might be people are pushing it in a passionate and honest way, what they believe in, but it might be going against... It's like maybe more so emotional and beliefs and ideas ruling emotions, ruling facts, going against. So I'm no expert, so I can't really jump into the middle of it all, right? And some people could say, well, it's common sense and from what the autopsy report says. Look, when I look at autopsies reports, all that language and wording, that's not my role, that's not what I do, but I will try to read it and understand it because it's a part of a case, but that's not my speciality, it never has been, and I've made that clear, okay? And all those words as well, trying to read and pronounce them, nightmare, just like in recent time. But so much blood present at the highway, enough for blood to be visibly seen, which is some of them. Timing of how long Noah's body was left out there for until the ME arrived, that's got to count for something, right? In terms of blood loss or lack of blood or blood being absorbed or in some way. If you come across someone early on as they're bleeding out, you're probably going to see more. If you come later in the day or days later, blood may have dried, some of it may have gone or been absorbed on if there's anything nearby, any additional material. So it makes it appear like there's less, but there was more originally. Some of the little factors like that. But when there's a division between experts, some experts say, well, there isn't enough blood, so it must be a beatdown and it must have occurred elsewhere. Other experts say, well, it can be explained by how the person died and the level of impact at the scene, and that determined how they bled out, etc., etc. So the experts being divided is the equivalent as the general public, the communities being divided. Of course, it's interesting when experts are countering one another like a debate, meaning it's still open for discussion and interpretation. I don't think it's done in a manipulative way, as in pushing the idea of there's no blood. You could deem it more as from what some people could argue, more of an ignorant outlook, neglecting the concept of blood or the explanation behind the supposed lack of blood visibly, on scene. And then other people just pushing through and giving other ideas who aren't in a position to do so because they're not experts themselves. So I don't think it's done in a manipulative way, but it has definitely captured the masses and it's created a big split. Of course, how does it benefit certain outcomes or ideas of naturally or forcibly pushing an agenda, a possible outcome of Noah's death? Well, it's a big factor because on the basis that there wasn't enough blood at the highway, you can push the argument that Noah must have died elsewhere. And just simply put, if Noah Presgrove died elsewhere or was present elsewhere whilst bleeding out and then was moved to the highway, guaranteed there would have to be foul play and higher chances of it being murder based on that. If Noah Presgrove outright died on the highway in that area or so, less likely to be foul play because where Noah died, he ended up as well. So no change or adjustments from the looks of it. Less likely foul play, meaning lower chances of possible murder based on that outlook. You can always cross it over with a hybrid, as in, yeah, based on the blood, Noah did bleed out and die at the highway in that spot, but he could have still been murdered on the highway too. And then other people can do the cross-counter hybrid of, yeah, there was foul play, but there was no murder. That Noah did die elsewhere, but it was through an accident, but then people panicked or felt responsible, so decided to try and cover it up to protect themselves. But instead of doing that, well, by doing that, they ended up actually incriminating themselves anyway, so they screwed themselves over. Would they do that? Maybe not, but it's still a theory or a concept. So it can be black or white, and in between as well, up for debate. That's at least what I would say. moving on. Jody Barth, white shorts were pristine, clean, no damage. I guess it's like a quote or a rough quote on what was supposedly said. I mean, pristine would mean in good condition all round. No marks, no dents, no scratches, no rips, no tears. Best example would be if you're collecting football cards, you get it graded, PSA graded 10, means it's in perfect condition. Immaculate, clean, mint, whatever you want to call it. If it's PSA graded 5, well, that's not good. Maybe the corners are bent, scratched, there's a tear mark, the centering isn't good, there's a laser mark or print, discoloration on the card, dirty fingerprints, you know, substances unnatural on it, and so on. It ruins the value of the card when there is physical damage, surface damage, or stains. Stains can technically damage clothing, more so ruins it. But normally damage is a term more associated with physical, visible, noticeable changes which can alter the look visually of things and the functionality and practicality of it. A car could be considered damaged, more so if it's got dents, missing pieces, loose items, crushed, scraped, and quite bad. A scratched car, technically it's causing damage. It's altering the natural look of what it is, damaging somebody's face. To be honest, you could argue and say damage in some ways is irreversible. You got to be careful how you word that, I understand. Things can be replaced or adjusted. If a car is damaged, it could be replaced for certain car parts or pieces, providing it's not a complete write-off, and providing you can get a hold of those pieces to replace. You're replacing it. When a human is damaged, you can't exactly replace them. You can't replace their mind. You can't replace their trauma. That can't be replaced. You can't erase it either. If a person has acid thrown in their face is damaged because it actually causes damage and alters the natural look of the person's face to something not so good. And it doesn't do much damn good either. Can a person's face be replaced? Not exactly. Can there be treatment and plastic surgery and all of that? Yes, and it alters the look further to make it look a little bit better, but it won't return it back to its normal original state. So in some ways, it's like an umbrella term, and you can get very specific or you can be very loose about what is determined as damage and what isn't. Just based on my own mindset, I would say damage can vary, but levels of damage can be where it noticeably changes the visual, the physical look of something or someone, possibly to the extent where it's irreversible and cannot be fixed. In terms of the shorts can be ripped, torn, with holes in. That's damage. Can it be reversed, or can it at least be repaired? Yes, if it's stitched together or patched, but not to its original state. There are adjustments made on top of it, right? So a level of irreversible damage, but it can be compensated and fixed in other ways. Is it a bit too deep? That I can understand not everybody will agree. It'll take too long to get into the specifics, okay? I've only talked about a certain aspect of it. But you could argue and say a stain, a skid mark on clothing can damage clothing if it's irreversible and it's stained for good. If you've got a designer bag, designer clothing, and if you spill a drink or food or sauce on it and you can't wash it out, you scrub, you do whatever, and it will not go away, it's technically damage, it's permanent. You've ruined it, or someone else has. If there is a stain or a mark, well, not a stain, but if there is a mark, a print, dirt, surface level, and it can be erased or washed off, the damage is gone. It's not really damage anymore, right? Damage is something which changes the visual look, and you can't really just get rid of it like that. Damage isn't always... Damage is a bit more long-term in a way. A skid mark, a dirty mark, a print on clothing or material. If it's temporary, it's not really damage because it's not damage to clothing. It's just wipe away. You've not damaged it, you've not ruined it. If you had a drawing, right? You're doing a drawing, for example, that over there. When I was doing that strawberry drawing, if I made a bit of a mistake or it was a bit wonky or I did it wrong, the shape, I've not damaged it. Yeah, there's a mark on it, a pencil mark. Can it be erased? Yeah, for most part of it. So no real harm done. If I was drawing in pen and my pen went off the paper or scribbled somehow, well, it's irreversible. You can't really do much about it. It's permanent now, that mark. So technically it is damaged. So if Jodie did say that it's in pristine condition, pristine can mean both physically, visually, applying both to no observable damage and also no stains or marks. If it's worded like that, it's like an umbrella term for both outlooks. If you used to say, well, the shorts have no observable damage like how the autopsy states, and that's it, there's still room to say, well, it doesn't mean to say it's completely clean. You can have undamaged, dirty clothing. It's very possible, easily, okay? You have a pair of pants, you have a pair of shoes, the muddy, the messy, the dirty, but they're in good condition, as in they're not ripped, they're not torn, no holes, just mucky, need cleaning. And then once they're clean, back to normal for most part of it, right? They're not damaged. The white shorts, only supposedly worn for a short period of time, for Noah at least. In terms of them in the middle of the road, you can say that's a little bit odd, but I've explained it based on the accident of falling out of a vehicle. Check my video out for that if you want further context of it, right? But it was never clearly mentioned whether there was marks, prints, dirt marks, blood marks and stuff like that on the shorts. That's kind of unknown of. The autopsy doesn't really acknowledge it either. So that is a mystery itself, right? The observable damage, well, the autopsy says non-observable damage. What maybe you would expect with the white shorts, maybe. But would you expect the black shorts to be ripped and torn when Noah wasn't wearing them at the time of his death? What else would have caused it? Well, I've already done a video about that. You can check it out yourself. So it's said by an independent person, expert from a police person, I believe, and how they word it with their language may be been misunderstood. See, I don't think I've seen that one by Jodie, so I'm being careful with my wording. But if it's like a rumour that, oh, it's in pristine condition, whoa, the autopsy report didn't say pristine condition from what I'm aware of. So that might be a bit too bold to say. Anyway, next point mentioned, Noah Presgrove's friends should have told the truth from the start. How do we know that they've told the truth? How do we know that they haven't? It's a bit of a weird situation. Have we seen that claim? Or some of these might be scenarios or claims, not rumours based on, well, because of the way the case has gone, because of where we are now, because of not much movement. Surely someone knows something, but they're not doing enough, or they're not saying enough that if they did do something or they did do more, we'd be better off now, there would be more progression, but who knows? At the end of the day, if partygoers just so happen to be at the party house inside more so, and Noah walks away distances himself, but then who is there to see Noah? Because if no one is, how are they to know? Along the same lines with the accident, if Noah was in the back bed of a pickup asleep, and if someone did, or some people got into that pickup to drive back home down the highway, and Noah did stand up and fall out, How are the supposed witnesses or the people of interest that were present in the moment of Noah's death to know what happened, to be in a position to cooperate when they don't know themselves because they never knew that Noah was in the back of a pickup truck when it happened, as an example, right? If people obviously were physically there during Noah's death and they're not saying anything, that's obviously a problem. Should, if it was foul play and if it was murder, should the friends tell the truth from the start? You'd want that, but realistically, would you expect that? People would obviously put themselves first, protect themselves if they were caught up in something like that, as like what most other people would. You've done something bad, you've done something wrong, you're going to protect yourself, protect loved ones, and so on. It's how it works. It's dark, it's bad, but it is what it is. If it's more so an accident and you're kind of tied up within it, it would be nice for you to speak up and tell the truth. But some people may be too scared to do so. So there's certain layers to it, but I think to jump in on that claim, that mention, it's a bit bold with where we stand in the case and stuff what we don't know of. Next point mention, if it was an accident, why not call 911? Doesn't mean to say there's involvement. Well, we don't know if it was an accident or not, right? And we don't know how it was done and if people were present. You can have an accident and you can have people present who are completely oblivious to it. As I said, if people were in a pickup truck, in a vehicle, Noah's in the back, woken up after sleeping in it, down the highway, stands up, loses balance, falls out, dies that way. And the people that are driving or the passenger had no clue Noah was in the back. So how are they supposed to know to call 911 in the moment when they had no clue it happened? And if that was the outcome, then you're not really going to get anything from then on. Unless somehow a person magically remembers or guesses and says, maybe when we were leaving, maybe Noah was in the back and he fell out then, but we didn't know, so we didn't call 911. Once again, it's like a theory-based idea of an accident, a theory-based concept of an outcome. You can't follow that up with a statement of, well, why didn't this happen? Why didn't that happen? Why didn't they do anything? Why are they keeping quiet? You can't base like a statement off from a theory which may or may not have happened, right? You could do like a counterpoint and a statement of, well, why didn't this happen? Why didn't that happen? Based on hard evidence. I can't think of an example on the spot. I mean, an example, not the best. Breely's sisters show up, willing to give Breely, Georgia, a ride home. You could say, well, based on that there was designated drivers, more than one besides Carter, but then how come Breely's sisters didn't give Noah a ride back home, considering Noah wanted a ride home then? Right? Well, the counterpoint to that, in fairness, would be because the sisters didn't know that Noah wanted a ride home, and maybe Noah didn't know that the sisters were willing to do that or were present. Noah may have been in a different room or inside, unaware to it. Or maybe Noah, by that point, thought, you know what, I don't need to go back home now. I'm fine as I am. So that's like an example of an event that did supposedly happen, adding on to a claim of, well, why didn't that happen? Why didn't this happen? And then countering it again. These other claims or rumours are based on a theory of what could have happened. You can't add it on by saying what did happen. It's just poor wording and language. And last one, anyone who doesn't think Noah Presgrove's friends are guilty don't want justice for Noah. Yeah, once again, it's just reckless language and jumping the gun. I think more so you could counter it and say, well, what about the people that counter Caden Pressey based on the clear discrepancies and mistakes made by Caden? When the general public bring it up, people from the light side are quick to call out Caden Pressey haters as being paid off and having deep pockets. Just like how, when I've done my analysis, valid observations, pointing out what Caden has said, comparing it later, pointing out the discrepancies, trying to figure out what Caden is talking about and what's true and what's false and why is it inconsistent. And just because I mention clear, valid observations people are quick to label me and say that I'm being paid off because I'm attacking Caden. It's incompetent. So basically the mindset is anyone that questions Caden Pressey is labelled as either being on the dark side, not wanting justice, and or being paid off as well to hide the truth. Yeah, it's just very silly and childish, right? What about the other possible pointer you could argue and say, those that keep pushing and pushing for foul? No, well, we can do it from both sides. Those that kept pushing and pushing for a hit and run. Why did people push it so much even when the police ruled it out? Is it because people don't want to accept or believe that their own kind of people, their own by blood, could be responsible for that? In denial? So like when there was a time where Stevie Howard kept going on about it online about it being a hit and run, and by then the police have already ruled it out as a hit and run. Why did Stevie Howard keep pushing it as a hit and run when it's officially being ruled out? That's a bit unusual. But then equally, you could say from the opposite angle, those that keep pushing and maybe in unnatural ways as well for the possible concept of foul play and more so murder. Why do people keep pushing it like that? It seems as if people want it to be a murder, as if people want it to be one of Noah's friends, if not more, who's responsible. Why would you want that? It depends how people push and if there's an agenda or a narrative. If it feels forced or unnatural, then they're the people that could be questioned as in, do you really want it to be like that outcome, or what? Or is it just what you truly believe in? And what they truly believe in could get mixed up with unnatural factors of how they come across. So I think there's probably other rumours as well. Whether I've mentioned them or not, it's hard to remember everything out there. But ultimately, is there a certain common theme with it all? More so, it's kind of 50-50. Some of the stuff in which key people are specifically pointed out or blamed for can come down to maybe driven by a certain motive in hopes of being able to blame someone, whether that be as a scapegoat or whether it be as just a strong emotion towards somebody in a biased way. But then in other aspects, when it's come to rumours, it's mainly been down to poor communication, misunderstanding what somebody else said, miswording, Chinese whispers. It happened in the Dylan Rounds case, it's happening here. It's unfortunate, and it spreads, and so on. Still a problem. See, look, with me, when it comes to trying to explain things, I try and do it as clear as possible. And I'm not just talking on YouTube, I'm talking anywhere and everywhere. Yes, I might talk on a bit too much or type a bit too much, but I'm trying to make it as clear and understandable as possible. Now, I tend to be the individual on the receiving end of terrible communication in which humans do not explain clear enough. Humans do not give clear or full context to the point where either I am guessing or I'm completely in the dark. And yet at times, these are the same people that expect me to know what's up or what's going on. But at the same time, how am I supposed to know when I don't know in the first place? How am I supposed to know what's up or what's going on when it's not being told or explained to begin with? It's ridiculous, right? And language and wording, the way people type and just in general, at times it makes no sense or it could be misinterpreted. And then yet you're blamed for it. You're blamed for misunderstanding what they were saying, even though they poorly executed it in how they type or and so on. Oh, well, this and this factor and that factor. When it's important moments, important situations, if there's mistyping and all of that, it can lead to detrimental effects and unnecessary trouble, stress, confusion, headaches, and anything else like that, which can be detrimental in the case and community, but anywhere, really anywhere, right? You know, when people say, you know, you should think before you speak, think before you type, and then before you post, reread what you typed. Does it actually make sense or not? The moment you hit that send button, it can shape how things go from there in a case, in a community, with a claim, a statement, a notification, a heads up, to a group, a mass of people, or just one individual. There can be terrible miscommunication, there can be terrible typing and just confusion. As I said, most of the time when I type from a YouTube comment to a forum page, maybe to elsewhere, short text, long text, comment, I make sure it's clear. And if people misunderstand me, well then, it is what it is. There's only so much that I can do. But I don't think other humans always make the effort to make it clear. I don't think other humans make the effort to type clearly, to spell properly. Oh, it doesn't really matter. Oh, it's not a big deal. Laugh it off, joke. Well, look where we are in this case. Is it really a laughing matter when there's Chinese whispers, misunderstandings of text and language, either mentioning a full stop or a comma when it should have been the other way around? So, like what Dwayne has said and how it ties on and how I have already interpreted it, my interpretation is correct. What Dwayne is getting at, he might mean something else. But in terms of what he's and how he's worded it, it comes across as something else. And it's when you get other humans, they say one thing or type one thing, but they mean another. And then when you bring it up to them, they get defensive. I never said that. I meant this. You're just misunderstanding it. No, I was talking about this, not that. What are you on about? Reread your message. Look before you send. Reread. Does it make sense? Did you spell it correctly? Is the sentence structuring okay or what? Oh, why does it have to be so serious? Oh, it's only casual. It shouldn't matter. Not the end of the world. Really? Depends what the situation is. If it's not that big of a deal, but it's consistent and repetitive, it can have a wearing effect just as much as one singular big event. It's not that difficult. At the end of the day, touch-based or by buttons, you press, you type, there's even autocorrect at times. You can look back, right? You get these communities with the voice to text speech, how it supposedly messes up and goes wrong. Maybe it does. Maybe it can mess up at times. Just reread before you send or edit the message if you can, because if you don't, it's going to cause a tidal wave of confusion. And I think when that happens, the moment it happens, they are in no position to get defensive. And I have come across defensive people before. They say one thing but mean the other. But based on what it reads on paper and visually speaking, what they said isn't what they meant, but it caused confusion. And they expect me to know? They expect me to know the context, all the ins and outs, what was said once compared to now, and all the gaps in between. If there's no communication, how am I supposed to know? How are other humans supposed to know, right? So like when I do breaking news, when I reveal stuff and do my coverage, I try and use keywords as best as I can. Even when there's like really important material, oh, should I be hyping it up? No, I still end up playing it down in a realistic way by saying, well, yeah, here's this and here's that, but still we don't actually have a time. But still we don't actually know the full context because this may only be a small clip of a bigger picture, right? So I'm showing breaking news and I'm still downplaying it in a natural, realistic way so people don't get ahead of themselves. Other humans would really play it up and be reckless in vocally describing it and even like typing it, writing it up, for example. So it can be an issue. Now, in terms of the patience factor, that's another thing. When people are maybe on the receiving end, when people are maybe consuming material, updates and so on, trying to understand something, are they really understanding it correctly? Or emotionally or not, are some people jumping the gun so they misunderstand it? Justin Roy has demonstrated it many times, and so have other people. By jumping the gun, you miss out on in the middle of the words, the lines in between, the small text. You skim over it, you judge too quickly, you react too quickly, you miss out on the key things at hand. I like to read through it a few times and look back again and look back again. Could be a form of self-doubt, could be slow to process things, but I double check, or at least tried as an effort to do so, to really understand, is that what's really being said? Is that really true? Even when it says clear as possible, clear as day, even if a mistake has been made in an autopsy report, such as the Rebecca Zahow case, it was stating 6:48 time of death on the 13th. Last seen alive on the 13th at 21:50 at night. How do you die and then be seen alive hours later? Mistake made, but I read it over and over and I said, am I reading this correctly? It was clear as day, but I still doubted it. I still reread it. That level is what's lacking within humans at times. People will read it quick, skim through it, miss out certain words, and then that's what leads to these rumours and misunderstandings and Chinese whispers. The patience factor is lacking with other humans, basically. People jumping the gun. The patience within me, and I can say this because I don't play myself up. I really never do. I almost play myself down. But what I can say categorically as a fact, I have the patience of a saint. I'm one of the most patient individuals within this entire world. Based on what I have experienced, what I have gone through, and how I've been treated, and things I've been on the receiving end of, I have been an extremely patient individual and beyond, right? So when it comes to things like this with the true crime cases, waiting for things to happen, waiting for change, waiting for developments, waiting on certain actions, because like in general, there can be a lot of promises, a lot of false promises, which don't yield anything. I've been on the receiving end many times of false promises. And it gets to the point of, yeah, okay, whatever. At first it's, ooh, sounds great. Ooh, nice. Never happens. False promise after false promise after false promise, to the point of where you adapt. You acknowledge and you listen, but you don't get excited, you don't get positive, because what is the point when nothing happens? Fuck all happens, so why bother getting positive about it? Why bother reacting to it? In one ear, out the other. If it happens, okay, great. If it doesn't, no surprise. That is the adaptation which I have taken for good reason, okay? Seen it too often. And based on that, and that mindset, hence why in true crime it benefits. As in, when you get all those posts about there's justice, by the end of the week there'll be a resolution. Big news coming from Dina Rose and all her points made, which never happened, to Partners in True Crime. There's big news on the way, big developments, shocking, never happened, and so on. And so on, and so on. All these big claims and promises made, which never happen. For everybody else, they get excited, they jump out of their seat, anticipating to only be let down yet again, right? I saw this back in the Dylan Rounds case. A lot of people around me getting all excited, all positive, all emotional, clap your hands, go around the campfire. What is the point? Nothing is going to happen. Oh, you're being so negative. Oh, no, I'm being realistic. I don't like being delusionally positive like most people are in this world, okay? It is what it is. And I've seen it too often in cases and outside of cases. False promises, too much hyped up, suggested, doesn't happen. Then down the line, things do happen in other ways, by other means, but maybe not by the same hands. The Dylan Rounds case filled with so much roller coaster of emotions for people, getting hyped up, being promised, you know, the case, being promised the world, it's going to change, it's going to improve, there's going to be results, there's going to be justice at this time, at that given point, and it didn't happen. It did in the end, but not by the hands of the general public or people in the community aspect. It was internally. And when it was ready, it was ready. When it was meant to be, it was meant to be, and it happened, right? Noah Presgrove case, same situation. You got members of the general public and so on claiming this and that and making big statements, and even certain creators as well, like we said, Partners in True Crime, hyping it up. It gets people's hopes up, but it's playing with people's emotions. That's manipulative. And anyone's capable of playing with people's emotions, both good people and bad people. That's what the reality is. And I think the other important factor to add in just in general, because like when there's a blowback, when there's a backlash within these cases, there's still drama going on, but elsewhere, which is okay, but not for others elsewhere. The insults, the words back and forth and complaints, people being called out and then other people calling other people out and then getting very defensive. The reality is there are times and moments where I will refer to myself that I am not a good person, I am not a bad person, I'm just a person, that is it. It's a better mindset to have there. Because if you regarded yourself as a good person, there will always be a measuring stick to compare with and to measure more often, and not always good. And at times, some people may regard themselves as good people. And then when another person gives them a piece of their own mind and reveals the actual truth of a situation, these people get so high up themselves thinking, oh, I'm a good person, how dare you call me this? Some people get very defensive and not know how to react because they've never been told the truth in the lifetime of what people really think of them and what they really are like. If people are so comfortable to hearing all positives and only positives mentioned about them and not the actual realistic dark truth, when they do finally hear the dark truth, it's something that they can't fathom or process in their mind. So they get defensive, up against the wall. They retaliate, verbally more so. Right? No one is perfect, but some people do try to be a bit better than others, but may not make a big song and dance about it. The people that don't make a big song and dance about it, more real, more genuine. The people that constantly refer to themselves as this or that, or like to think themselves as this and that, some of the times when they're called out for their own actions, called out for their darkness, called out for their problematic behaviour, they get so defensive because they're not used to hearing the negative dark truth about themselves because nobody else can be bothered, right? And you see that within true crime cases when people get so defensive when they're called out on something. Yeah. So I see a lot, and as for the adaptation, it benefits me in the cases in which I'm not going to get manipulated like how others do, and my hopes are not going to be raised and then let down because I don't get excited in the first place. If it happens, it happens. If there's evidence and it's backed up, then that's good. But in the meantime, it might just be words and you just work with what you've got, okay? With that all being said, we probably should look at the comments briefly on Facebook. Transitioning on to the comments section from the list of rumours, what have been highlighted, Mike Johnson does say, I will add some things that are not rumours. Let's see what they are. Partygoers spoke to law enforcement from the beginning. Well, that appears to be the case. I mean, in terms of actual physical evidence, physical interviews, we've not been able to obtain that, but in the subpoena by the victim's family, if they get a hold of all that stuff, it might further reinforce it, right? Handing in their phones, I believe it was like 5 people or so that did that immediately. Doing interviews, answering questions, which you would hope for. Police have a geofence from 10:30 p.m. to 9 in the morning. Is that geofence specifically to do with those same said partygoers that spoke to law enforcement earlier on? I mean, yes, it's good, it can tell a story, but you would hope and wish for all partygoers' geofences to be obtained, and if Caden Presley's isn't, well then, odd one out, and it's unfortunate. The next point, Jack did pass his polygraph. Even though Kathy Bingham is the only one, or the original one, to claim it was inconclusive. Jack put up the memorial first and remained in contact with Noah's family. Well, Caden Pressey did acknowledge it as well in the background of those DM messages that Jack did was the original, and Caden kind of assisted either with the same one or a different one. Okay. Now, question. Is Jack Newton still in contact with Noah's family at this moment in time? Whilst you've got the subpoena in the background, you've got the wrongful death lawsuit and those defendants, and none of them have supposedly come forth in regards to acknowledging or going through the supposed legal stuff? Are they travelling about, enjoying the freedom that they have before things get messy? That's what's been suggested on Facebook recently. I don't know if anyone else is aware. Jack stated he had just started dating Carter but knew them from a long time. Right. What? Just started dating? I believe it was Robin Smith and Ashley Chadwick that said no, it wasn't dating as in the last 2 weeks or so. It was within a few months. There's a few discrepancies. All social media wasn't scrubbed, neither were all the phones. At the end of the day, if the phones were handed in to police and it's all been documented and noted down, then there shouldn't be a problem. One phone was new, as in Carter Combs, who had an accident the week before or so, got a brand new phone, didn't have time to transfer all the stuff over, so it appeared brand new, but perceived by others as wiped. But to be honest, Justin Roy did bring it up originally about the phones being wiped, but considering Justin wasn't there to see it, how did Justin find out that the phones were supposedly wiped? Is it because certain people from the party, Justin's family of family and nephews that were down there, saw or witnessed Carter with a blank, new-looking phone, but assumed it's been wiped, passed it, whispered it into Justin's ear, and then so on? Who knows? Police retrieved all information from it. Police looked at vehicles and ATV. So, if the police did look at these vehicles, was that on site at the property? If so, did they check inside of the house as well? Jack had a pre-planned fishing trip with his dad that he obviously didn't go to. Jack did interviews from the start and put his number on Facebook. That's how I contacted him. Oh, did he? And yet, when JJ Bumpaz puts his phone number out there publicly with consent, YouTube deems that as breaking guidelines, even though the person consented to their own phone number being shown. Weird, isn't it? Jack was interviewed by Partners in True Crime, where Ashley and Robin critiqued him, and he wasn't given the opportunity to respond. Well, the thing is, it was said, and I believe by Partners in True Crime, that Jack Newton refused to do a live interview and preferred for it to be pre-recorded. So really, Jack shot himself in the foot there, technically. Unless Partners in True Crime purposely denied Jack the ability to respond back. But yeah, the concerns, yet Caden got to edit 45 minutes of his. Well, I wasn't aware of that. You're saying that Caden Pressey's part 1 interview, because there was a lot of jump cuts. Are you saying that Caden Pressey had the final decision and choice to get things cut out of that interview? Where did that come from? I've never heard of it before. It's new to me. Of course, Robin says she supports Caden. Would look foolish at this point to say otherwise. However, no one has seen Caden's analysis. In fact, no one has seen Caden's analysis, Caden's phone data, publicly. But you can say the same to all the other partygoers. But beside that, Caden did made what do you call it? He made a word promise to the general public that he was going to download the Apple data and release it public. Never happened. Went quiet. And Alicia and Caden have been caught being untruthful repeatedly. Alicia didn't cooperate with police. In fact, she told them talk to a lawyer. There's much more, but I'll stop here for now. Interesting. We'll acknowledge some points here and there if need be. You were there? You were there? What does that mean? Dirty Dan. Interesting name. George says, apparently Rebecca Zahau's case caught the attention of the family's attorneys, but I guess they hadn't reckoned how it will play out. Going to be extremely entertaining. Well, we'll get back to that in just a second. What the hell are you talking about? You spew your toxic sludge wherever you can regardless. Okay. So, the reason why George Choden has brought up Rebecca Zahau's case and the attention of the family's attorney not being happy with the cause of death and the outcome, wanting another look, filing a wrongful death lawsuit, similarities to the Noah Presgrove case. George had watched my video recently, so I appreciate that, hence why he's left a comment here. But the thing is, George, the Rebecca Zahau case is a little bit, in some ways, unusual compared to the Noah Presgrove case. With Noah Presgrove, you got the possibilities of alcohol being an influence. You got the influence of multiple people about, either as witnesses or people of interest or possible roadblocks in the outcome of Noah, depending on how you look at it. You have different environments and different hazardous zones, from the railroad crossing to the highway, considering where he was found at. And then just the theme of partying and being around certain people, and then the theme of girl trouble, the theme of arguments at the party. Not that they're the be-all and end-all, but there's many components to the Noah Presgrove case where you could try and justify or work out a possible outcome for how Noah died, as in accident or more to it. With the Rebecca Zahau case, it's how the police handled it, it's how the case was treated, it's how the autopsy was treated, wrong information added on, mistakes made there. The unusual claims of Rebecca died the night of the 12th, yet it was the 13th when she did supposedly die. The fact that there was a witness nearby, a neighbour, that heard female screaming on the night as well. The fact that there was no signs of suicidal tendencies and behaviour, as in no room for concern at the time. The fact, George, that on the bedroom door of Rebecca's it said, "She saved him, can you save her?" A very unusual cryptic message. The fact that there was a witchcraft book on the bookshelf in which one of the pages had an image or an illustration of a naked woman tied behind her back, and technically that's how she was found. Not that it's directly suggesting it was self-inflicted, but there's some unusual patterns. The fact that there was a knife in which the handle had a period blood on but absolutely no fingerprints. The fact that there was a second knife side by side with the other which did have her fingerprints on. Why'd there be two knives? Why'd one be touched but the other one no fingerprints? Yet they're both from the kitchen, so they would have been transported from one place to another by the same person or multiple. The fact that there was women's clothing and makeup in the guest house in an unmade bed next to the room of Adam Shacknai, the brother to Jonah Shacknai. Was there some female guest invited over, or was it Rebecca herself? There seems to be areas there. It is a coincidence, though, how, more so in that case, wealthy people, wealthy family, money, suggestions by others that people have been paid off. Is that absolutely proven? No, but it's always possible to add in. When it comes to the family and what they believe in, they don't feel justice has been fully given, then they'll fight back and make a claim. Of course, you always got to understand the other people on the receiving end who are accused, what they go through as well and how they're dragged through it, especially if they turn out to be innocent. Doesn't do much good for them, but it doesn't do much good for the family either. Sometimes it can be a lose-lose both ways. But in terms of how things play out, the difference is, George, in the Rebecca Zahau case, there was a payout of $600,000 by supposedly Adam Shacknai's insurance company. And then there was another $5 million payout to do with something else, but that was separate. The fact that there was a $600,000 payout implies that there's a level of consequence in a way for certain actions, or there's a level of guilt. Paying the victim's family for what exactly? If you are innocent, if you've done nothing wrong, you shouldn't have to pay anyone anything. You should be paid stuff if you want to do a counter-suit. I think you, George, suggested that some of the people, defendants' names that have been dragged through the mud in this wrongful death lawsuit, that they could file a counter-suit or they could counter-sue and get money that way for all the damages done to them, their life, psychologically and all that. Well, in terms of the Rebecca Zahau case, Adam, who was accused or labelled as being responsible and sexual assault, as bad and drastic as it sounds, and supposedly found innocent at some point, still pays $600,000 to the victim's family. So there must have been a level of guilt or some kind of responsibility in order to be paying out a great amount like that. More so, if the person was truly innocent and did absolutely nothing wrong, they should be getting paid, not the other way around. So I think there are differences, can't quite compare. Also can't quite compare because it's different backgrounds, different state, different environment, different setting, different theme, different gender, different age, different relationship statuses. Noah's around friends and strangers. Rebecca is by herself with husband's brother. So it narrows it down. As for the cameras, as for the surveillance, who knows about that? I've not really heard much from the Rebecca case. Let's move on. Tracy, to Mike, in my opinion, rumours you posted are petty little rumours that really don't mean anything. Well, the thing is, Tracy, some of which are not petty, they're actually quite deep, and it's led on to things being dragged out and repeated, and confusion and theories, more so themes, causes of death, stated as a fact when it's not, getting a bit out of control, out of hand, okay? So some petty, others not so much. I've explained it already in my video, so you can always rewind back if you join late. Just curious why Noah asked for a ride. Noah was begged to come back, the tooth in the pocket. What does proven to be rumours disprove? The blood on the scene. There is little blood on the scene, and no, this was not all internally. The fishing trip, that dang fishing trip, was changed so many times. Was it really? It was a chartered trip that all the families were to attend until Caleb said something completely opposite directly after Stevie Howard stated the chartered trip. Then it was just a couple of guys until Carter Combs stated she was also attending originally. I get that, yes. However, she wasn't with Jack when he left for the fishing trip that morning. Well, it was just worded as it was supposed to go, but ended up not, which is interesting. I have no intentions of arguing. Okay. Oh, what's this? Petty little rumours? No, they have heavily influenced the entire case. Yeah. In some ways, yeah. What case are you referring to? None of my business. Heavily influences Ellie's investigation. Well, yeah, in some ways it does. Like with when you got Justin Roy contacting police. If the police find it unhelpful or it's not doing much good and it's slowing them down, yeah. You look at the Idaho 4 case. Online, TikTok and beyond was causing the case to be slowed down because the police had to moderate and listen in and look online to all the noise and sort that out, and that slowed down the investigation. It was mentioned and called out by police as well. Quit posting with theories. See, the thing is, theories aren't the problem. Stating an idea as a fact or a statement is. The concept of language and applying it is the problem. And the people that are reckless in their wording are the problem. I'd base it off theories and ideas, and times it can be right and correct. It's just handled differently here. Of course, tons of rumours when facts and proof are being withheld from the victim's family. Well, the subpoena should be able to fix that, you'd think. Online discussion forums are prime for every type of speculation. It depends, it comes down to language and wording. Interesting though, selective one-sided rumours you've posted, Mike, and I think some of what you're calling rumour are just some people's theories or opinions. No, the thing is, even if it is some people's theories and opinions, they're not worded as opinions. They're worded as facts, statements, just like the time when people kept saying, it was Jack Newton that killed Noah Presgrove. It's Jack Newton that knows something but is keeping quiet. That's different to other people that say, I think Jack might have killed Noah. In my opinion, it's possible that Jack knows something but is keeping quiet. You see the difference in language and wording? Oh, I wonder if your daughter or son was found naked on the shoulder of a highway, party host and popped in at some of the friends, not helping you, but were instead hostile towards you, even victim shamed and blamed your child, that you'd feel the same. Accident implies something unavoidable or blameless, when in reality, most tragedies included vehicle collision, human choices, errors, negligence. Last time I responded to you, like Noah, I would talk with these people implying they were murders. I'd sit at Licious house until I got the evidence. Okay, so on and so on. Lastly, yes, an accident in a young man walking along a highway in the dark, and again, you twist my words, leaving Noah became a crime and they should be held responsible in some way or another. Why look at Chris' truck 3 times, no matter how bad you want this to be. Chris Pyatt, the one that called in because he believed he hit something like a hog, and it wasn't Noah but felt responsible. Owning up quick, resolved quick. Probably the right thing to do. Right, so it just goes on complaining. Right. On and on and on. How did Chris's truck go from twice twice to 3 times. I guess I must have missed the proof shown on that third search. However, even a second search where Ellie circled back to Chris's truck well over a year later only lends itself more to the suspicion and possibilities that OHP investigators were negligent in their initial investigations. How many more comments do we have to go through? We got Brenda Dick says, what about voice recording saying get the body off his property? Sounded like evidence on me. What? Voice recording get the body off his property? What on earth is that? Unless it's from some recording which I've not listened to before. Let's see the responses to try and understand the context. Anyone watching right now, it's not a rumour. Not a rumour. Check it out. Sounds pretty real to me. But check what out and where. Where exactly? Mike chooses to post rumours. He's chosen to admit very telling of his biasness. Okay then. Well, why not give counterpoints? Always welcome to, right? People complain and say, oh, it's one-sided. Oh, it's biased. Oh, it's selective. Well, counter it with your points of views, with the rumours that have come from elsewhere, opposite sides. Mention it, don't just complain. Actually, I don't know, bring it up if it's possible. George to Brenda, but Michael Facecaz is a felon and his FIL used to be a senior sheriff deputy until he got Right, but where's this mention of the audio? Tim Daniel, you got to be kidding me. That's not a voice recording of a person saying, get that body off my property. That's someone saying what they think happened. Who said it though? That's not an actual recording of a person saying that. Do you think they recorded themselves saying to move a dead body? Never heard this before. Is it recent? EMS was called to the scene, or Terrell volunteer firefighters are trained in EMS. Rumble strips full of blood. Only one shoe on. One shoe on? It's only Jack Newton that stated Noah had one shoe on in the Parts in True Crime interview. All the other times before that, by other people and articles, mismatched shoes. Even the autopsy report states mismatched shoes. So why is Jack Newton the only one to say Noah had one shoe on? That gets forgotten about too often. All these recordings and evidence these groups have gathered, or the army group have gathered, yet I've never seen or heard of them. Neither have I. Weird. So, anyone else in the background, you let me know if you've heard of something to do with moving the body off audio. Gets pretty heavy there. A lot of writing. You can always pause the video if you want, but I'm just looking for the key things that stand out. Wasn't someone saying to get the body off their land, it was somebody saying that somebody said that. Somebody, and a lot. No, the person in the video is saying what they heard from a recording from the person who was told to remove the body. Is this got anything to do with the trend of people talking about Donna Bond and buddy interviews or audios or something? I've not really looked at it recently because I've been doing my own individual videos and stuff. Absolutely false. Donna, okay, here we go. Donna had said many times she was working off bad information and rumours. There is no possible way Donna could know that Bub Wilcoxon said those words. Michael clipped that audio on purpose, as him and Justin have been on a campaign to make Donna look bad. She's already spoken on that. It's insane to think that, even after Donna had said she had bad information. Please stop spreading slanderous rumours. Do you really think someone recorded themselves talking about moving a dead body? Right, so it's to do with Donna Bond speaking about of what she's been told or what she's heard, and people have clipped it without context to make it sound like it's coming from her directly. That's unfortunate. Donna Bond saying something makes it evidence. Wow, this is the kind of things you people use to come up with your theories. It all makes sense now. Someone talking about rumours they heard on facts. I thought they had a video or audio of someone actually saying that, like someone from the party. Wow, the things used as actual information in this case is crazy. If you're not sure about what happened, why do these people twist the truth? Oh, there we go. Miranda. I think this might be adding on to the additional rumours. 11. Mikey Lair fish-hooked Noah. Pretty sure that's a physical altercation, assault. Oh, maybe this is a counterpoint. 15. Noah's family heard different versions from very few friends, which is why there is a civil suit at hand. Either the family felt it wasn't Noah's truth or it wasn't the complete truth. Take in mind, it was at a point where I think it might have been Robin Smith it was Robin Smith that said, I don't feel like we're being told the full truth. I feel like people are hiding stuff from us, as in the party goes. That's what Robin Smith said, as an individual person in part of the victim's family, but still could have influenced with others. What about it being staged as a hit and run? Why did they stage it as a hit and run, but yet continue to claim that hit and run was ruled out? Well, it's kind of like what I was getting at a bit earlier, to be honest, as in like when people were saying, if the police are paid off by the same said people or relatives to the ones that tried staging a hit and run, you'd think the police would go along with it instead of ruling it out immediately. Can't be corrupt if you rule hit and run out when the dark ones want it, posed that way. How do you stage a death as a hit and run without actually causing injuries to the body by hitting it with a motorised vehicle, which would leave evidence? Well, there might be some exception, not in this particular case, but the Rebecca Zahow case. She's found hanging off a balcony, presumed or assumed suicide, pretty quick. Yet, it's also possible to strangle someone with the same material before that, then chuck them over the balcony to stage it as a self-hanging. But they were actually strangled before that. And the injuries are somewhat consistent because if you're going to hang, there's higher chances of your spine and your vertebrae fracturing, maybe breaking completely, internal decapitation. That wasn't the case for Rebecca. It was more hemorrhages and strains and pulls and additional damage on the skin and cut deep in. Strangulation could have been a slow death, that type of hanging. Slow death, not enough to be an instant kill. That can be similar with if you've just been strangled on the spot and not hung, when it's something wrapped around you, same material too. So you can stage it. Same type of material used, same type of kind of death as in strangulation, but staged as it was self-inflicted, not by the hands of somebody else. With Noah Presgrove, it's a lot more complex there. It's based on if he did die in other ways. Other ways, it would have to possibly involve a vehicle to then stage it as a hit and run to kind of create similarities, but hit and run's been ruled out. But the usage of a vehicle is somewhat still present. So maybe if a vehicle was involved in some other way, accidental or not, that might have what sparked people's ideas, as in let's stage it as a hit and run because Noah has already died by the hands of a vehicle in some way, so we're close enough. Just like in Rebecca Zahow's case of this foul play, well, she's already possibly been strangled with the rope. Why not hang her as well? Because it's the same type of death in a way. But the autopsy reports with Noah and Rebecca are vastly different, as in detail and more. Hit and run. My thoughts exactly redundant. Sense to me. Choose one statement Dalen made over another. Dalen states early on they don't think it was a hit and run. Dalen later updates the statement to say they are moving away from caused by an object, beating, and now towards vehicle caused. Why only stick with the outdated statement? Because the pro-murder folks need that statement. Holding on, clinging on to something. Okay, so kind of interesting to see some of the comments. There wasn't really much going on. And that might be a good reason as to why I've drifted from Facebook comments more in recent time, because there's a lot of words, there's a lot of paragraphs, but it's amongst internal affairs and other things going on at hand. At the end of the day, people are allowed to defend themselves and give their points of views. But for someone like me, when I'm looking for key points relevant to the original post, I don't see it as much. But it is what it is. I can step in and I'll just use my thoughts originally. It makes more sense to do so, kind of like what I did today. I may try and consider applying it more in the future. Instead of just sticking to the screen and reading from it, at times I can make bullet points and then I'll respond back that way. Sometimes when there's a lot of heavy words and key quotes, it might take too long to write it all down again to then read it out. So there might be some exceptions. But I hope you found the video somewhat interesting. A couple more videos to come here and there. We'll see what happens next. Any updates on pre-existing stuff, then that can be done. But that's it for now. My name's WarLike Wrath. I'll see you next time. Goodbye for now.